14. Resumption of debate on the question that the bill be read the second time. Ms Forrest.
The Honourable Member for Murchison.
Thank you, Mr President. First off, I would like to thank the Leader for arranging the briefing for us. I know it's a bit frustrating at times when we spend a lot of time on these things, but this is an important bill. We've had very limited time to look at it, and it has some quite technical aspects to it that I personally needed to be confident with before we move forward. So, Mr President, I'd just like to make some overarching comments before I comment specifically on the bill. I'm not going to make a long contribution on this, but it may be a little bit disjointed because of the nature of the way I've been trying to glean the information as during the day. Mr President, we all heard from our Police Commissioner, our State Controller, Darren Hine, in the briefing, who reiterated the seriousness of the situation we are facing, and that can't be understated. So I'd also like to acknowledge the leadership shown by our Premier in dealing with this incredibly challenging circumstance we find ourselves in. I also acknowledge the incredible amount of work the Office of Parliamentary Counsel have had to produce to see us debating this bill, as well as all the other ones they've been working on, the emergency ones as well as other stuff that doesn't necessarily stop. This bill is complex. It does need to be scrutinised to ensure that we've covered the key issues to ensure the state and the government can continue to operate. And Robin Webb made it clear this may not be the only piece of legislation we need to deal with to ensure that all the powers are there that are necessary. So we may have to come back to deal with some other aspects, but this is an important step that's necessary right now. So, Mr President, there have been some very difficult days this week for so many workers in Tasmania and throughout Australia. I know these decisions that have been taken to close so many businesses will be devastating to so many, and support will be needed. There's a lot of information on government websites about this, and we need to be sure that we, personally, only share and distribute credible and accurate information with the public and on social media, and take down anything that's not right. Take it off your site if it's on your site. We should also call out inaccurate information. When people do share it, tell them it's wrong. Post the right information and direct people to where the accurate information can be found. That's the only way we can stop that, because rumours spread as quickly, if not more quickly, than the COVID-19 virus does, and can also be as dangerous and as damaging if it causes people to not act according to the rules and requirements that we now have in place to protect us all. Very difficult decisions are not easy to make in such circumstances, and we know that the pain and hardship that will follow is very hard for all of us to actually witness, even though, because we're still getting paid. I appreciate the efforts of Premier Gutwin and will continue to support him and his government as they work to contain this awful virus. I thank him for being so available to me personally and to others, and for being so responsive when he is so busy. I know the decision to close so many businesses combined with so many workers being required to work from home has meant many job losses. You only had to watch the Premier's daily updates that have been excellent, informative, calm, and such an important way to communicate broadly with the public through social media, that the impact it's having on him. Those who watched on Tuesday, particularly and again today, will be aware of the anguish these decisions are causing the Premier. And I encourage you, if you haven't already started watching the 9:15 updates and shared the feed on your Facebook feed, do that to get it out there as much as you can. Yeah. So, Mr President, just going to the bill specifically, there's a number of aspects I just wanted to touch on. The concerns around, or not concerns, the matters around the amendment to planning and other permits. This is often one that causes concern because planning is a bit fraught at the best of times, and to have a power where you can amend and revoke or alter a permit that's in place, basically for any reason, provided it fits in within the scope of the bill, and that's related to the emergency situation we're in. It does raises the concern to need to get this clear that it's not an open ticket to do anything you like in the planning space. I'm confident that's not the case. These changes will need to be managed through by notice, and all notices that are included in this bill need to go through the Subordinate Legislation Committee. So whilst the rest of you aren't on that committee, maybe not doing as much, I reckon for a short period we're going to be doing a hell of a lot. And the responsibilities are very significant. I mean, I've been on the Subordinate Legislation Committee for about 12 years now, I think, long time. I chaired it for a long time. I stepped down from the chair a little while back to give others a chance to take that role on. But it is a very important committee. I always said it was the most powerful and important Subordinate Legislation Committee. People used to laugh at me. But this is just not anymore. That's right. And it is really important that the Subordinate Legislation Committee is supported in doing its job. It won't be easy. It'll be a lot of pressure to ensure that the notices that are made do fit within the requirements of the legislation, are related to this emergency we're facing, and that no person or a group of people are negatively impacted in a way that perhaps hasn't been foreseen. Now, I know the Minister's not going to bring forward notices that are unnecessary. I'm confident of that. But it's still an important job that we have as a committee to make sure that those things do proceed effectively, smoothly, and are actually with the best of intentions and actually achieve the outcome that's sought. So I just want to make that point. A lot of people out there find the Subordinate Legislation Committee an unusual beast, mainly because of its name. What is subordinate legislation and that sort of thing, and I always said I didn't want to be subordinate to anything, so there you go. But anyway, so I think those matters are important, and the introduction of what is colloquially known as Henry VIII clauses, which basically take the role of Parliament away, should only ever be considered in such emergency and drastic circumstances. That's what we're dealing with here, and that's why they're there. But they need to be limited, they need to be scrutinised, they need to be only enforced for as long as is necessary. Now, there was the question about a sunset clause, and whether there needs to be a sunset clause or not, and I would get the leader to just reiterate this in her response, if she could, about the why we don't have a specific sunset clause. And for my understanding of that from the briefing just this evening now was if you had a sunset provision, it could remove the legal status of some of the notices and that were made during that period. Because the Act is limited by the period of which the emergency situation continues, and there's a process around that once that is passed, then no more notices can be made. The Parliament can come back and revoke this bill if they, repeal this legislation if they wanted to, but it does give validity to all the actions that were taken under this Act. So if the leader could just clarify that for me, I'd be really appreciative. I know other members will talk about the tenancy issues. And the other matter I did raise in the briefing, Mr President, was relation to there's a section here in section 19 talking about public exhibition of certain documents. And this is referring a lot to documents that are normally put up for public exhibition, but you have to go somewhere to look at them, like development applications. You have to go to the council and you can't take them with you. You're not supposed to take photos, I don't think, of them either, whereas that won't be possible under these sort of circumstances we're now living in. I did ask the question about documents that are held by the Legislative Council clerk, or I'm sure the House of Assembly clerk as well, that have been tabled or are part of committee proceedings that are kept. And I guess the definition of public exhibition is not in the bill, but it might be useful to have that clarified, that it would extend to our clerks being able to electronically send documents that a person who may be seeking to view. That is not a private document, it's a public document. So, yeah, if you could just clarify, that will include documents held by the clerks if parliamentary clerks if a person sought to access those. So, Mr President, I won't go into the measures that I know other members will speak about. I think that is covered. Just bear with me a moment, just so I check I've covered up on things I wanted to talk about. Okay. Yeah, the second reading speech does provide a lot of clarity around the other matters, and but again, I appreciate the opportunity to have some of those issues more fleshed out in the briefing. I don't need to rehash them all here now. I feel confident that essentially we're on the right path. So, Mr President, just to close in my contribution on this bill, I also like to note that we may be away from this place for some time, and so I want to make some broad, just closing comments with relation to that. The COVID-19 crisis we are facing is serious. We don't know what the future holds, and we must be united in this fight. We must do all we can personally and collectively to limit the spread of the disease. As I said in my State of the State response, there are other community leaders who mocked me for refusing to shake hands only 2 weeks ago, less than 2 weeks ago, for urging physical distancing and avoiding large groups. They mocked me. I am sure these views are well and truly put to bed. I know there are some in the chamber last week, who believed I was being overzealous, making fun of my focus on good personal hygiene and physical distancing. Being ridiculed for taking my health and health of my family and my community seriously is worth accepting such ridicule. As a student nurse, we learned about serious infectious diseases. We learned what was necessary to protect our patients and ourselves, and these lessons stay with you forever. Over the weekend this week, it's become patently clear these measures I was taking, despite some snide remarks, were and remain necessary. We must all pull together to get through this, and it doesn't matter where specifically the people who have tested positive are in Tasmania. We should all be behaving in ways that would assume that we have COVID-19, because if we act that way, we'll act to prevent the spread. We will stay at home. We will do the right thing. It's only if we do this we'll have some hope of containing this virus, and if we don't, it'll be disastrous. We must be community leaders and role models in this. So please stay home unless you absolutely have to go out. This is not just for us, this is for everybody out there who might be listening and who might watch this at a later time. Only go out when you really need to, and only go out at all if you haven't been told to be in quarantine or self-isolation, in which case arrange for others to ensure you have what you need. The government, I understand, today have implemented measures to support this for those who don't have family and friends who can assist. And that was a bit of a missing link, and I'm really pleased to see that that's happening now. My husband and I were only talking about this last night. That's the missing link here. You've got to make it easy for people to do the right thing. And thank you to the government for recognising that and doing the right thing. Wash your hands thoroughly and regularly, and don't get any closer than 1.5 metres from others or more if possible. Only cough or sneeze into your elbow. And if you need to wipe or blow your nose, use a tissue and discard it immediately in the bin. Then wash and sanitise your hands again, thoroughly. Don't use handkerchiefs, they are not hygienic. Use tissues and throw them in the bin. Stay at home and away from others, and only go out for essential reasons. And if you've only got any flu-like symptoms, don't go anywhere. Just stay at home. I just want to read something that, this is where we don't want to get to, but I think we're pretty close. In fact, I think we might be there before we know it. This is from New Zealand this afternoon. National Emergency Management Agency alert. From 11:59 p.m. tonight, the whole of New Zealand moves to COVID-19 alert level 4. This message is for all of New Zealand. We are depending on you. Follow the rules and stay home. Act as if you have COVID-19. This will save lives. Remember, where you stay tonight is where you must stay from now on. You must only be in physical contact with those you are living with. It is likely level 4 measures will stay in place for a number of weeks. Let's do our bit to unite against COVID-19. We could be there tomorrow or the next day. So where you stay that night, for the New Zealanders, where they stay at night, that's it. That's where they are. That's how serious this is. So, Mr President, we need to be serious and sensible about this. These emergency measures can only really support the actions we all need to take to protect our health and well-being and seek to protect our economy. And don't forget the mental health and well-being of our family and friends, neighbours and community broadly. Keep in touch with them through non-physical means. Social isolation can be extremely damaging and challenging for almost everyone. Mr President, my greatest hope and wish at this time is that in 3 and then in 6 and then in 12 months we as a parliament, as a collective and the government will be accused of being too cautious, of acting too soon, of going too hard. I sincerely hope we're accused of that. Because if we're not accused of that, we'll be accused of letting too many people die in this state. Too many of our family and friends and community members. Because if we're accused of being too hard, too fast, it will mean that we've done our job and contained the virus. We'll have had fewer deaths and we'll be able to ease the restrictions on our movement we're all facing. Mr President, I want to be accused of that. I don't want to be in a position where harsher measures are needed. We don't have a whole lot more levers to pull. But I know our Premier will pull them if he needs to, and he has my support to do it. And Mr President, I just want to finish with just reading a little meme I posted on Facebook yesterday or the day before. I'm going to alter one word in it for the obvious reasons when you get there. Your grandparents were called to fighting world wars. You're being called to wash your hands and sit on the couch. Don't muck this up.